Hi everyone, my name is Steve Reifman. I'm a National Board Certified Elementary Classroom Teacher and author in Santa Monica, California. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a bummer that we're not able to be in San Luis Obispo together, but hopefully you will enjoy and benefit from the virtual workshop experience that we're putting on this year. At the end of my first year of teaching, when I taught first grade, two of my friends from school grabbed me and said, "You're coming with us to this PE conference," and I'd never heard of it before. But I went with them and had a fantastic time, and I went back the next year, and I'm so happy to say that this year is the 26th consecutive year that I've participated in EPEW. Our focus today is cross-curricular rainy day PE activities. By the way, you see the email down to the bottom. If you ever have any questions for me or you want any materials that I referenced during the session, please let me know and I'll be happy to send out whatever I can or steer you in the right direction. First, a little bit about me. You see a couple pictures in the top left and top right corner of Santa Monica, California. I am a huge Dodgers fan. I'm hoping that this is the year we seal the deal on our World Series, even though it's going to be a shortened season, hopefully. And I'm also a big football fan. You see a few pictures of a trip I was lucky enough to take to Lambeau Field in Green Bay. And then I'm also the writer of the Chase Manning Mystery Series for kids 8 to 12. And I also do resource books for teachers and parents. One of them is a book called Rocket that was actually born at EPEW in the early 2000s. I was at a session one day where the instructors were sharing movement activities that also helped kids learn academic content. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I developed a strong interest in that. And over many years, I gathered, created, and adapted as many as I could, especially activities that could help transform the classroom environment. So the kids are learning, but they're having a great time, and they incorporate movement, songs, and stories. The ones in this session are mostly going to be about movement, but they might touch on the music and stories as well. The idea is that when trying to help kids learn things that would be difficult for them to learn or require memorization or concepts that are abstract, it helps tremendously to set them to music and put them into a story or have them involve movement. So that's what Rocket is about. And then only last year, I decided that these activities would fare well as PE activities on inclement weather days. So it was a matter of what I call turbocharging the activities to make them more suitable for PE workouts in addition to helping the kids learn better. So all of those are in the one you see on the right, Cross-Curricular Rainy Day PE Activities, which is available on Amazon as an ebook, Teachers Pay Teachers as a print book. And there are a lot of benefits from teaching with this approach. First is the kids get very excited because many of the activities are novel and engaging, so there's an emotional involvement and connection between the kids, period, the kids in the class, and also between the kids and the content itself. And because of that, the kids pay more attention to what's going on and they retain their learning a lot longer. And because of those great things, they are feeling better about themselves and then they feel better about their group. So there's a lot of team bonding that happens when everybody does these activities together. So there's higher self-esteem and group esteem. There's also increased morale and enthusiasm, not just for those activities, but at its best, it leads to a carryover effect where the kids are more enthusiastic about their overall classroom learning experience. And then another benefit of the activities I'm going to share with you is that most require little to no planning. Around this time, in the early to mid 2000s, I went to a session at EPEW by a man named Jeff Habig, who had a huge influence on me. You'll see another one of his activities throughout in this session. He made the point that with this chain reaction, if we start on the right, the ultimate goal is to increase student learning. And what's the best way to do that? He said no matter what it is that we're putting out there every day, the number one thing we can do is to have kids pay more attention to that, and then they will learn better. And then what's the best way for them to increase their attention? It's to involve emotions. So the kids aren't there at school because they have to and going through the motions. They are eagerly anticipating what's going to happen, and they're emotionally involved and connected. So these stop being about simple learning activities and they start becoming experiences that kids will remember for a long time. They'll remember the content, but they'll remember the experience even more. Now, with the activities I'm going to mention today, if you're using them for a PE class on a rainy day or inclement weather day, I suggest stringing a whole bunch of them together because most of them are not very long. One of them is not going to be enough for a full PE activity. So you'd want to string them together. If you're sharing them with classroom teachers, then they might want to do a handful of them throughout the day as the need arises or as the desire arises to have the kids up and moving. Now, one of the things that I did to quote unquote turbocharge the original activities from Rocket is to make them longer so that we want to increase the amount of time that kids spend moving. So what I did to achieve that was, first of all, lengthen the amount of time that's actual exercise. Because in the original form, there's movement involved, but it's not something that's consistent for many minutes at a time. So here we're aiming to go in that direction. Also, if there are breaks, we can either take out the breaks, we can reduce them, or we can pick up the pace so that it's more of a cardio workout to the degree that you want to do with the kids. And then we can also add movement in between turns when there might not be movement in the original way. The ultimate goal is for the kids to have a great time, also to learn academic content or have their learning reinforced, and also to get a great workout. So I think you'll find that as we go through these, you'll find that we can achieve all of those aims. Here's our agenda today. I want to introduce something that I call concept-embedded movement. That will lead into a few math activities and a few language arts activities. Then, depending on time, we may have time for some additional activities. So with concept-embedded movement, I want to go back to my childhood, and I remember vividly the first time I went to a restaurant and had banana pancakes. They were absolutely delicious because the cook put banana into the batter. So when the pancakes came out, there was a bite of banana in every bite of pancake. They were mixed together thoroughly. And I loved it so much, the next time my family went out for breakfast, I ordered banana pancakes again. This time they were good, but they weren't great. It wasn't the same. This time, banana was not baked into the batter or incorporated into the batter. Slices of banana were simply put on top, which was nice, but it wasn't the same as having them in every bite in the batter. So the reason I share this is because most of the activities I share with you feature concept-embedded movement. That means movement's incorporated into the activity, but it's not random movement. The movement that the kids do represents, embodies, or represents the content that they're learning, so there's a match. And as the kids are moving, they're naturally learning the content. If we take a sedentary classroom learning activity and we have the kids get up every couple minutes and jog in place, that's good. It's better than the way things often are because kids often sit for too long and we want them to move. That would be simply adding banana on top of the pancake, but not putting it into the batter, if you will. So the first activity I want to share with you that incorporates concept-embedded movement is an activity from the man that I mentioned a few minutes ago named Jeff Habig. Once I saw it, I knew it was one of the best ideas I'd ever seen, and I've used it in my classroom ever since. And when I share it with other teachers, they love it as well and take it back to their classes. He taught us the Macarena dance, for those of us like me who didn't know it, and he mentioned that it had 12 parts. So what he did was create strips involving skip counting. So if you look on the far left, you see 3 through 36. That's 12 skip counts by 3. So what we do is as we skip count, we do the Macarena dance so that the kids are saying the numbers, they're seeing the numbers, they're hearing the numbers, and they're moving. Anytime we have kids say, see, do, and move at the same, or hear and move at the same time, I refer to that as the educational grand slam, and I think it's the biggest bang for our buck we can get because there's so many different ways the kids are learning that it's naturally going to help everybody learn because there's so many learning styles represented and the kids are having a blast at the same time. So the first time I introduced this to kids, we would only do one strip. That's plenty. It takes a while to get the coordination down between doing the 12 parts of the dance and saying one number for each part. The second time we might build up to 2 or 3 strips. And then after a while, there's enough time in the version that I have to get through the 5 strips that you see here and then 3 or 4 more on the other side so that altogether we can get through 8 or 9 skip counts. So let's give this a shot here. I tried to turn it off. It wasn't turning off. That was the Macarena karaoke version, which is 4 minutes, 8 seconds long. This is the version that I found on iTunes that works the best. So once we get started, we would count together. I know you can't see me doing the Macarena dance, which is probably a good thing that you can't see me do any form of dance. But we would stick out one hand, 3, stick out the other hand, 6, turn the first hand over, 9, turn the second hand over, 12. And then right after we get all the way to 36, we go right to the next one, right to the next one. And the kids pick up on it really quickly. And I've noticed that ever since I started using this with my kids, their proficiency with the multiplication and division facts has gone way up because it's a natural way for them to move, because they're paying so much attention to it, because they are engaged in the activity. So for rainy day PE, we can do it we can go through each strip more than once. Like maybe we play the song twice if we don't want it to be simply a 3 or 4 minute activity. We can make it a 6 to 8 minute activity. We can also pick up the pace. We can also involve jumping or other types of movement if you feel like your kids are up to that challenge. So we can increase the cardiovascular aspect of the workout if we wish. But just doing the Macarena dance is a great movement workout with instructional benefits. The next 2 activities, also mathematical, help the kids with their place value. And as a 3rd and 4th grade teacher for many years, I can tell you that when the kids develop strong number sense and have a strong sense of the place value system, their math proficiency soars. But many kids have trouble either remembering the name of each position, or they have trouble understanding the meaning of each position. So these 2 activities work hand in hand to help the kids achieve that. Place value jumping jacks help the kids understand the meaning of each place value position, while place value hopscotch helps them learn the name. So let's start with place value jumping jacks. I would show this on the board, and we would start in the ones place. I have my students stand in the rug that's in the front of our room. We have the rug that's already divided into squares, and that makes it easy for the kids to organize themselves in space. If you don't have that, or if you're in a gym or multi-purpose room, you can have them spread out with space in between each one. And then to the greatest extent possible, we want them to have a lot of space open to their left, because they're going to be moving through the different place value positions. So that's the example of concept embedded movement. So here we start with number 1 underneath the word ones, and we do jumping jacks. Every time we do a jumping jack, we're counting by 1 because all of us are in the ones place. So we would do jumping jacks for 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way until we get to 9. If you want the kids to do half jacks, or you want to give them the choice, that's fine. If they're already exhausted by this point, they just want to do finger jacks, that's something that you can think about. But I have my kids at least do the half jacks up to the shoulder, if not full jumping jacks all the way over the top of their head. So once they get to 9, we stop, because once you get to 10, you cannot have 10 in the ones position. We have to be ready to transition into the 10s. So I have my students give themselves the tightest self-hug possible, because what kids often learn in elementary classrooms is place value using popsicle sticks. And when they get 10, they wrap the 10th, once they get to 10th stick, they wrap it with a rubber band, and then they move it into the 10s container. So once they get to 9, we give ourselves a hug, and then as a group, in unison, we hop 1 space over to the left into the 10s place, and then we start our jumping jacks over again. This time we're counting by 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 90. Once again, when we get to 90, we stop. And then when we get to 100, and we can't stay in the 10s place, we have to move. So we give ourselves a little bit bigger hug, just a little bit bigger, because now we're trying to hold or contain 100 popsicle sticks and not 10. So the hug needs to be a little wider. And again, in unison, we hop together into the hundreds place. We count by 100 as we do our jumping jacks all the way to 900. And then we continue. Little bigger hug, even bigger hug when we get to 10,000s. This activity is very adaptable to different grade levels or age levels. So you can do just 1s and 10s if you're working with younger kids. You can go into the 100,000s and millions with older kids if you have the space. We just want to be careful that nobody's bumping into walls or tables if we involve more place value positions. So again, if we want to increase the intensity of the workout, we can definitely insist on full jumping jacks. We can pick up the pace. We can have the kids run through the order 1, 2, or even 3 times so that we are increasing the quality of the workout that they are getting. With place value hopscotch, one lesson I learned early in my time at EPEW, because I was not a PE major and did not have formal PE training, is if you're doing any kind of relays, you definitely want short lines so that the kids are not spending much time at all waiting. So the court that you see is one that I did in sidewalk chalk on the playground at school, and I made a whole bunch of them. I made about 5, and can make even more, because if that's the case, then there's not going to be more than, depending on your class size, about 4 to 5 kids in any one line max. If you have tenure at your school and a good relationship with your principal, you can try painting these hopscotch courts. Otherwise, I think sidewalk chalk is fine. Now, that's outdoors, and this is a session about inclement weather, so we'd be moving inside. The options are to use string or yarn or painter's tape. Any of that could actually get the boundaries, but my favorite one to do, and sometimes you just have to improvise because things move quickly and we don't want to spend so much time setting up, especially if we're stringing together a whole bunch of activities in a row. We can simply show this picture on the screen or draw it on a board in front of the room, and then the kids in their own space can simply envision that that is the court that's in front of them, and they can hop through the court on 1 foot, ones, tens, and hundreds. Double jump, they actually say the comma, thousands, 10,000s. Again, the size of the court can be modified to account for however many decimal or however many place value positions you want the kids to do. So if we're doing everybody in their own space, we can have everybody moving at the same time. If we have sections of the room blocked out and the kids are in short lines, then we can have the first person in each line go and then quickly walk to the back of their line and go right to the next person, so that this moves quickly. I strongly suggest doing this several times in a row, and then for classroom instructional purposes, doing this for the first few days of any place value unit. I would open every day of the first unit in math, place value, with a few minutes of place value jumping jacks and a few minutes of place value hopscotch, because it makes a huge difference in the kids' place value understanding over time. So combining the hopscotch and the jumping jacks will, again, pay big dividends down the road. Let's move to the area of language arts. I want to share with you reading around the room, the slouch game, and the jumping game. Some of them are on YouTube, and if you just type in my name on YouTube, I have somewhere around 55 to 60 short videos with teaching tips for teachers and parents. If you want to let your classroom teachers know about it, they might find topics of interest to them. Let's start with reading around the room, and I want to give credit to Marcia Tate, who has a book called Worksheets Don't Grow Dendrites, and that's a great title. So I learned of reading around the room in that book. The reason we do this is because many kids read too quickly, and because of that, they fly right through the punctuation and their comprehension suffers. So doing reading around the room improves their fluency, and because of that, it improves their understanding. It also improves their volume and expression. So the basic idea is that we give a common text to everybody in the group. Now, if you're in a classroom, the kids are probably going to have, I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least one textbook that they could use, science, social studies. It really doesn't matter as long as you pick a page and everybody's open to the same page at the same time. We want everybody in a circle facing the same direction with a little space in between them. And there's something about the structure of that circle that provides not only a physical structure, but also a vocal structure that helps everybody perform the activity better. So if there are kids who struggle with this, they're going to get better quickly because they're following the lead of their classmates. So on the go signal, everybody starts reading from the same point at the same time. And the rule is when we're reading, we're walking. And when we're not reading, we pause. So let's pretend that the first sentence on the page says, "What are you talking about?" So we would start, everybody's reading out loud as they're walking at the same pace, so nobody's bumping into each other. What are you talking about? Now, as soon as you come to a comma, we would hop on 1 foot. As soon as we come to the end of a sentence, we would jump on 2 feet. If it was a question, we could jump on 2 feet as we hold our arms out to the side and lift our shoulders up and shrug as if we're asking a question. If it's an exclamation point, we can jump on 2 feet and do it with some extra oomph because there's some strong emotion involved. So you and your students would figure out what corresponding moves you do for the different types of punctuation that they're going to experience. So there's a a pattern where we're reading and walking, and then we're stopping and doing different moves to represent the punctuation. Now that's how this would look in an instructional setting in class. We would do this for maybe 3 minutes a day during a reading workshop lesson. Do that every day for a week, and the kids are going to have huge improvement in their reading pace, volume, and expression. Now, to make this more of a workout, we have lots of choices. One is, instead of hopping on one foot for a comma and jumping on 2 feet for a period, we could do 5 jumping jacks or 10 jumping jacks. We can involve lunges. I'm sure you can come up with ideas that are just as good, if not better. So we can have the kids exercise for a longer period of time, a more sustained period of time in between sentences before going to the next one. Perfectly fine to have them do 10 jumping jacks at a comma, 24 period. You can figure out what you feel is an appropriate amount of exercise to build in. It's always nice to make sure that we're getting a balanced workout. So maybe if we're doing lunges, then we can somehow incorporate the upper body. Maybe we're doing some kind of push-ups on the table in between, or maybe we want to take a little break in between sentences and do table push-ups, even though that's not technically connected to one of the punctuation marks. Maybe we can find a way to make it that way. But we want to build in exercise as the kids are reading around the room and stopping at the different punctuation marks. Next is a student favorite called the Slouch Game. These are some students of mine who agreed to stay after school, and I got their parents' permission to be in a YouTube video. I did ask for them to be bored at the beginning, because when kids are slouching, it's often because they're bored or a little tired. Kids enjoy this game because adults are constantly asking them not to slouch, and here not only can they slouch, but they need to because it's part of a game. This helps them with capitalization rules. Specifically, it helps them tell the difference between a common noun and a proper noun. So I will start off with a predictable pattern of words. So I'll say a noun such as city, and they will slouch because common nouns start with lowercase letters, and then I'll say Los Angeles, and then they'll sit up tall, approximating the height of a capital letter. So they're sitting all proper for proper nouns to approximate the height of a capital letter, and they're slouching for the common nouns to approximate the height of a lowercase letter. Now, at the beginning, I would alternate back and forth between common and proper until they get the idea, and then I would just totally mix it up so that there's no way for them to outguess what I'm going to do. And if anybody makes a mistake, it's not a problem at all. They just realize it quickly and join what their classmates are doing. It's very non-threatening, and nobody's ever put on the spot. Now, with some of these exercises I've been talking about so far, I'm suggesting that you lengthen the activity for a better workout. This is one where I would not want to lengthen the activity, because even though no student has ever been injured during this activity with the slouching, I do worry that if we did this long enough, somebody's low back is going to be in at least a little bit of jeopardy. So we can even say that to the kids. If they want to hold on to the table or hold on to the chair to ease the transition between slouching and sitting, they can do that. And I would limit it again to no more than a couple minutes with this. This game is also good for other types of capitalization rules, so the kids know when to use a capital and when not to use a capital. Another language arts game is the jumping game. This was actually invented at EPEW during the opening Sunday night session, when we were put into groups and we were walking around to meeting the different presenters, and I wasn't presenting this year. So my friend Stacy and I went to a presenter, and she showed us an African jumping game. And then it just shows you that once you start thinking of how to create movement games to teach content, then our minds just automatically go there. So we took what she was showing us, and we made a game which is basically rock, paper, scissors with our feet. And it helps us learn synonyms and antonyms. And what the teacher does is call out a go word. So let's pretend I use the word horrible. The kids would jump up on 2 feet, jump once, they would jump again, jump twice, then they would show. So it's jump once, jump twice, show, and actually call that out to help them jump at the same pace. When they show, that means they stick out one foot. They don't pre-plan it. If they're showing feet from the same side of the room, then, like for example, the girl on the left, if she stuck out her right foot, and then the boy in maroon, red, he stuck out his left foot, that would be same side of the room. they would come up with synonyms for the go word horrible. They'd have about 30 seconds to come up with synonyms. If the legs made a diagonal, if it was each of their left feet that makes a diagonal, then their feet are coming from the opposite side of the room, they would brainstorm antonyms. So the kids come to associate same side, synonym, opposite side, antonym, and then after they had some brainstorming time, I would hear from each group and they would call out synonyms and antonyms that they came up with. So it's a great activity to improve our word choice. It helps us understand synonyms and antonyms so much better because those terms are very easily confused. And if we want to increase the workout, we can have them do things other than jump once, jump twice, and show. Maybe they can jog in place, jumping jacks, and then show, or jumping jacks, lunge, and then show. And when we do it in class for instructional purposes, we take breaks in between. Maybe for PE, we don't take breaks in between. So instead of standing and brainstorming for 30 seconds, maybe we have them jog in place for 30 seconds. So they're really getting a workout the entire time, mixing in the jumping with the jogging. You can figure out how you would like to do that. And I would do about 3 or 4 rounds in class, have them figure out synonyms and antonyms. And then by that point, just a few minutes a day for a few days. Somebody said this at Cal Poly, and I agree with it, that a few minutes of movement activity spread over days does more to increase kids' understanding than sometimes a week's worth of paper and pencil activities will. Next, this is a recent activity that I learned just a couple years ago, and the connection with language arts is in terms of public speaking and presenting ideas to a group, and it uses Flipgrid. So if you've never used it, that's a great app for kids to make their own videos and share them easily with me or with the class account, and we can watch one another's work. So if you're not familiar with the Tabata, it's a type of workout where you're moving hard for 20 seconds and then resting for 10. We repeat that 8 times, so altogether it's a 4-minute workout. So there's 8 segments of 20 seconds on and then 10 seconds of rest. What I had the kids do was pick an exercise that they wanted to contribute to our Tabata Tuesday choices, because I introduced Tabata Tuesday. I led the first session. I picked 2 exercises, but like I try to do with everything, I want them to know that this class isn't about me. It's about all of us being a team, and everybody's ideas are welcome, and I want them to know that I'm always happy to listen to their suggestions. So the kids made, for homework one night, they did 30-second videos where they spoke into the camera. They introduced what their exercise is called. Sometimes it's a traditional exercise like jumping jacks or jump ropes or skiers. Sometimes it's one that they make up themselves, and sometimes those ended up being the most popular ones. So from the ones that the kids did, I made this list, and I make a new list every year. I show it on the board for Tabata Tuesday. We have a student leader. That person picks 2, and we rotate between those 2. So we're doing each one 4 times during our Tabata workout. And I have my Beatles music that I use as the soundtrack. I'm branching out into other songs too now. And I have the Tabata app that's free from the App Store. So that helps keep track of the time, so I don't have to keep track of the time or the music. I can walk around and encourage everybody, compliment them on their great effort. And if anybody needs a little boost to kind of pick up the pace or increase the effort, I can do that privately as I walk around the room. Sometimes there are kids who are naturals at this and they love being leaders. So kids can come up to the front of the room and they can be our movement leaders, and that inspires the others. And it's just one of the highlights of the week when we start off with movement in a way that captures the idea that the kids themselves came up with. So even if you do not have the opportunity on an inclement weather day to draw on a list made from Flipgrid, it's still a great exercise activity to do when we want to do an indoor workout. Next, I want to share something called a movement story. And once again, the first exposure I had to this concept was at EPEW. And the idea is that the teacher reads aloud a short, 1 page at most, short story. It can either introduce new content for the kids to learn, or it could allow them to practice or review knowledge that they already have, but doing it in a way that is novel, meaningful, and engaging. So I'm going to read one to you called about rainforest layers. Now, even if you're sitting, you can still, you're welcome to stand up and do this, or if you just want to do this where you're sitting, that's fine too. The idea is that every time I read a verb you act out the verb, and the kids love doing this. They kind of ham it up, and they're getting a nice workout too. When I do this for instructional purposes, they're only doing this for about 5 seconds each, but if it's indoor PE on a rainy day, I'm going to let them go. They're going to do this for about 30 seconds per verb. Some are more active than others. Like there's one about blinking your eyelids. That's not very taxing, so maybe we want to cut that one short. But if there's anything about hopping or running or swimming, then we can keep that going so we can figure out which verbs we want to give greater emphasis to. Now, the kids are being great listeners at this time because they know that every time the teacher calls out an action, they respond by moving in that way. So it's a way to take the power of storytelling to help the kids learn academic content while helping them be better listeners and giving them a great workout. So here's the Rainforest Layer story. This takes them on a virtual tour of the different parts of the rainforest. I do this at the beginning of a science unit that we do. It does incorporate key concepts that we're going to learn more about, namely the survival features that many animals have and the interdependence that exists in any ecosystem. So here we go. You are a large crocodile swimming in one of the rainforest's winding rivers searching for your lunch. So I would stop on swimming better than I just did, and the kids would pretend to be swimming. Winding rivers searching for your lunch. So they would put their hand over their eyes and pretend to be searching. I'd keep that one short. Blink your 3 eyelids that protect your eyes as you swim. Push hard through the water using your powerful, flexible tail. Chomp down with your mighty jaws that carry over 60 teeth. You are now a tiny insect crawling around on the forest floor. If there's room for them to do actual crawling, they might. Otherwise, they can just be on their knees. You can figure some variation of that. Snack on the many dead leaves that cover the forest floor. Watch out, though, for the anteaters coming after you. You are now green tree frog hopping on a leafy bromeliad in the rainforest second layer, the understory. That's when I keep going because they can hop for a while. That's just under half of this story, so I want to stop there so we can move on. If you want a copy of this story, you can just email me and I can send it to you. Same with any other resource that I'm mentioning today. Next, one of my favorite ideas comes from one of my favorite instructors that I met. I met her at EPEW, even though she teaches a mile from me. Mary Heert is one of the best middle school PE teachers in the profession, in my opinion. She's had a lot of great activities. This one is a variation of rock, paper, scissors, and it can be used anytime that we want the kids to learn something involving layers or levels or increasing sizes. So she talks about the life cycle of a butterfly, how the butterfly starts off as an egg and then becomes a caterpillar, then a chrysalis, then a butterfly. So what happens is we all start as eggs. That means we get down on our knees, we're on the floor, we have a partner playing rock, paper, scissors, and we're all eggs. And then whoever wins becomes a caterpillar. So they, instead of being as close to the ground as possible, then they're up on their knees a little bit. Then they find someone else to play with who's also a caterpillar, and then the winner gets taller to become a chrysalis, and then when a chrysalis faces another one, the winner becomes a butterfly, and that person is at full height. So if you do not win, then you stay at the height you are, but if you do win, you graduate or you evolve into the next level. There are a couple ways of doing this. One way is to have everybody in one contained space. And if you're a butterfly and you win, you simply look around that closed confined space and you find another chrysalis. So you're all staying in the same area as you do this, and all the different levels are kind of mixed together. Another way, which is my favorite when we do this outdoors, it could be done indoors too, assuming that furniture is not blocking the way. If it's done on a kickball diamond, that's the best way for me to explain it. Everybody would start as an egg, very small, at home plate. And then the winners would run as fast as they could to first base. They get a little bit taller. They could run at full height. Or we can have them run at a very short height. We could do that. That could be fun to watch. And then once they get to first base, the caterpillars could square off, and then the winners would travel to second base, where each chrysalis would square off with the others, and then all the winners would move to third base, where the butterflies would square off, and then they would head home after winning to become eggs again. Now, if we can do that in class where they're going from one corner of the room to the next, that's a great way to improve the workout. Just by squatting and bending and standing up, they're getting some leg work out there. But if we can have them do more vigorous movement as they go from one level to the next, that can be a really good thing for them. This can also be done, as you see on the bottom. For place value, this could easily be done with the ones, and then the tens, then the hundreds, then the thousands. It can be done with measurements such as inches, feet, yards, etc. The rainforest layers that I just mentioned, or that was part of the movement story, we can do that as well. Okay, we do have time for a couple bonus activities I wasn't expecting to get to. If you are wanting to share this with classroom teachers, or if you're ever in a situation where you're in a classroom on a rainy day and there's really not much to do, and the teacher says, well, I was going to have them do a worksheet, there are ways of taking a sedentary worksheet activity and turning it into an experience where the kids are moving around. It can be done quite easily. We can do this by adding movements, adding gestures, adding both movements and gestures, or having some form of rotation. So one thing that we learn in 4th grade is similes, metaphors, hyperbole, and personification. In case we have forgotten, similes are comparisons using like or as. Metaphors are comparisons without using like or as. Hyperbole is an exaggeration. Personification is when we give human qualities to things that are not human. So if we say, the wind was angry that day, we're personifying the wind. So in a typical classroom setting, the kids would probably just be sitting on the rug or sitting on their desk, doing this independently, going from one question to the next. There's really no movement or exercise of any kind. Now imagine if we arranged all the desks in a circle and everybody is standing behind a chair, and instead of doing all of the questions on one sheet, they're only going to do one before rotating to the next one. This is a really nice way to build in a lot of movement. It's one of my favorite things to do once we're into the school year a little bit, because it requires some management, and I wouldn't do this right away in the beginning because things might get a little chaotic if the kids are not used to it. So let's pretend that we give everybody a minute to do the first one. She runs as fast as a cheetah, and they have to write whether that's a simile, metaphor, hyperbole, or personification. Well, it's comparing she to a cheetah using as. So that's going to be a simile. So give the kids a couple seconds to write it down. Then we can call for the gesture. We can come up with 4 gestures, each one corresponding to one of the terms. So we can have the kids flash their gesture. We can also have a movement associated with each one. Since similes involve things being similar, maybe they can run in a way that is similar to a track star. They can run as fast as they can. I would choose 4 movements that are vigorous movements so that they're getting a good workout. Then before they go to the next one, rather than just sitting down and doing number 2, we can have them rotate 3 spots to the left. And again, this is where we want to make sure that it's under control so that nobody's passing anybody or knocking anybody over. They can run or skip or hop 3 or 5 or even 10 spots to their right before stopping at the paper that's open to them. So we're building in gestures, we're building in movements, we're building in rotation before going to the second one. And then they do number 2, same thing. They show the gesture, they show the movement, rotate. We're going fast. This is something that where each question could take no more than 5 or 10 seconds. And then at the very end, I love not going over the answers until the very end, because when the kids get to the last stop, they're scoring or correcting a paper that they didn't do. So there's nobody's going to feel bad because they know they got everything wrong. They did each of their answers on a different paper, so it's completely anonymous. And I even I have them write the team name at the top of the paper before they start. So then we'll go through all the answers. They'll mark it, they'll put a check if it's right, they'll change it if it's wrong. So they're still getting the same feedback, but they're doing it in a way that's really good for their self-esteem because it's private. Okay, we have just a few minutes left, and I was hoping we'd have time to squeeze in one more thing, and we do. One of my favorite examples of using movement in storytelling to help kids learn content is 2 stories that I came up with. They're the story of Perry Meter and the story of Aria, and they're both on YouTube. Many times we get confused between perimeter and aria. Which one is it that means we're going all the way around a shape, and which one means the interior space? So I start our geometry unit when we're focusing on perimeter and area by reading or I don't read it, but I'm gonna read it to you now because I want to be sure you're hearing the full original version. I tell the kids the story of an interesting young boy named Perry. I say, once there was a boy named Perry. He was a bit unusual because the only thing he liked to do was walk around the outside edge of every place he visited. At recess, he walked along the border of the playground. At home, he walked around the outside edge of his room. His mom noticed her son's habit and shared her concern with Mr. Meter, Perry's father. She said, "Honey, I'm worried about Perry. All he wants to do is walk around the edge of things." He told her not to worry about it, but Perry's behavior continued. Finally, they decided that Perry needed to be checked out by a doctor. So after school the next day, the three went to the doctor. As the family waited for the doctor, Mr. Meter read a magazine, Mrs. Meter was a little frantic, worrying about her son, and Perry just walked around the edge of the waiting room. Once they were in the examination room, once Perry stopped walking around it, the doctor determined that Perry was just fine and that the parents should simply leave him alone and take him to have a nice meal. So the Meters went to Perry's favorite restaurant, Sioux Plantation, which sadly closed, where Perry proceeded to walk a series of laps around the salad bar. The next day at school, Perry began walking laps around the track. His walking turned into running, and the coach noticed Perry's talent. Over time, Perry became a successful runner and lived happily ever after. Kids really like this story because it takes somebody who's kind of unusual and, not like most of us, and it has a happy ending. He finds success and happiness as a track runner. So when I do this for instructional purposes, I have a student walk outside the door and come back in pretending to be Perry Meter. I pull out one of the desks and ask them to do what Perry Meter does. And that student walks around the desk until I ask that person to stop. And that image is burning into the kids' brains of seeing somebody walk around a table. And next, I introduce the kids to a young lady who lives down the street from Perry named Aria. She's another interesting individual because she doesn't walk around places as Perry does. She likes to lie down on flat things and cover them completely. Luckily for her, she has the ability to change the shape of her body so she can cover even the most unusual objects. At home, when her mother showed Aria the family's new rug, she got on the floor and lay down on it. At school, when her friends played place value hopscotch at recess, Aria didn't do any hopping. She lay down on the court. In class, when the teacher passed out the place value mats so the kids could learn their place value positions, you guessed it, Aria lay on them. One day, Aria's family went shopping for a new bed for Aria's little sister. To Aria, the mattress store may as well have been Disneyland. Her eyes lit up at the sight of all the brand new mattresses. Aria started to lie down on every one of them. The store manager noticed Aria and went over to her mother. "Ma'am, is this your daughter?" he asked. "Yes, she is," Aria's mom replied, thinking he was upset and would ask them to leave the store. She was surprised to see that he couldn't stop smiling. "Ma'am," he said to her, "your daughter has real talent. I've never seen anyone who lies down as well as she does. Why, she's a natural. I would like to hire her to inspect all the new mattresses as they arrive at the store to ensure that they're fit to sell to customers." Aria's mom was delighted, and the manager hired Aria as the store's new mattress inspector. She became a great success and lived happily ever after. So once again, the kids are feeling good that she found her calling. I have another student walk outside, come back in, pretending to be Aria, and they get a little freaked out because nobody's ever asked them to lie down on a table before in class, but they do. The kids are laughing, and it's also the only time probably that student will be complimented for lying down on the job. So once Aria and Perry have been introduced to the kids, we bring them together, where one student acts as Perry, walking around, the other student is Aria lying down on that same table, and the kids are laughing, and it's an experience. Two of the kids are moving, and they're learning to differentiate those two concepts. So that's how it looks instructionally. For PE, you would have the kids pair up, and you would have them separate desks, not mess up the class completely, but hopefully give every pair its own desk. One student could be Perry Meter, and one thing I learned from John Thompson at EPEW is you want to avoid, if possible, having the kids do a certain number of reps. So instead of having one student be Aria and the other student being Perry Meter, walking or jogging around the table 5 times and then switching, then the other doing it 5 times, give them a certain amount of time instead of reps. Because kids who are able to do more and want to challenge themselves to do more can, so that they're going against the clock and not it's not a one size fits all where different kids are doing the same number of reps. Now, they can each stay at their own table and alternate, getting a lot of good movement because they're going to be walking or jogging around the table. You can also, if you're up for it, you can have them do aria and perimeter at one table and then find another table in the room, do that there. So every group is actually moving to another table after they complete their first table. And the goal is in whatever, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, trying to get around to every desk. So they're really moving with this one, all the while learning the difference between aria and perimeter. Okay, it is now the 45-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and stop. Hopefully, you enjoyed our session and found the ideas useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me if there's any way that I can help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this session from EPEW 2020. We're saving the next few minutes for you to ask those final questions before we log off. If you have any questions afterwards, please reach out to the presenter or send a message to EPEW through our website.
Don't forget that we have more amazing sessions going on. Head over to our website, epew-cp.weebly.com, and look for the virtual EPEW 2020 tab.
You can also access the presentations on YouTube by typing in the hashtag EPEW 2020.
We'd like to thank the amazing EPEW committee for all their hard work over this past year. This event would not have been possible without their dedication, commitment, and volunteering their time to providing high-quality professional development.
Don't forget about our other events like our socials and share times. Links can be found on our website.
Remember our motto for EPEW, come to learn, leave as family. Thank you for joining our family today.